Well, that is the kind of view that I have right now. I'm sitting here at a mountain, very small mountain, but still a mountain, right outside where I live. The mountain is called Kaptensberget, Captain's Mountain. But it is a magnificent view here. Easy the best view this far this summer. And a whole lot better day than I thought it would be. So I thought it was a good idea to actually do a response to a thread right here, outdoors. When I'm having woods behind me, I'm having a hill downstairs, right down in front of me. I'm all alone, and it's a great time to do a response to Rob Walker's thread, where he had paired 40 artists and paired them, taken 40 artists and paired them 2 by 2, and we're supposed to choose between one of them, of each pairing. And it sounded like a very interesting thread. Hello there, Rob. I hope that you have a real nice summer. Summer for me have been a little so-so. The weather hasn't been all that great, actually. It has been actually bad weather, so it's better today, actually. And if you hear some windy noise in the background, I hope that you can forgive that. But it was such a great moment to do this right here. So I hope that it won't be disturbing too much. And I will also do some apology for that I'm going to say some not too kind words about some of the most legendary artists that we have. But a lot of these artists were artists that I regularly don't listen to, as I don't listen to 60s rock all that much, or early 70s rock. So I will be saying some not too nice word about some artists that are very classical to some, but I hope that you can forgive that. You can't love them all, but I respect them still. So let's start from the beginning with the first pairing. May not sound all that unusual, but it's interesting to me. Beatles versus the Rolling Stones. The interesting here is that neither of these bands are my absolute favorites. There are some great Beatles songs, no doubt about it. I like A Hard Day's Night, All My Loving, Eleanor Rigby is a great one, Strawberry Fields Forever. So there are some really great Beatles songs, even though I'm not sure I would go that far that I would buy a Beatles album. On the other hand, Rolling Stones I think is dreadfully boring. They have made 2 great songs, Painted Black and One Hit to the Body from '86. Otherwise, I think Stones is very, very boring. And Mick Jagger's voice, he overacts each and every time. So I think that I give this one to the Beatles. I think I listen much more rather to the Beatles. Number 2, even worse, Who versus Kinks. There are 2 bands that I definitely don't listen at all to. I hardly know any real song about the Kinks. It's not, as I said, 60s rock is not my regular musical dose. The Who, I've never been a fan of. Too noisy 60s rock for me. But I have a feeling that Kinks is a little bit softer. So without knowing what I'm talking about, and since it's much more fun to say something than just skip a question, I give this one to the Kinks, because I have a feeling still that Kinks is better, the little I've heard of them, than what the Who is. And continuing on the road of bands that I don't listen to, Birds versus Doors. This is very hard. Mr. Tambourine Man is a pretty good song, but not something that I die to own, actually. The Doors is a band that I think is pretty uninteresting, with the exception from the song Hello, I Love You, that I actually think is a great one. But I give this victory to one. I think the Birds is a bit softer, even though I like Hello, I Love You more than I like Mr. Tambourine Man. I think that Birds is softer and has a more even catalog than the Doors have, that I barely just like one song. So I give this one to Birds. Peter Gabriel versus Kate Bush. This one is a whole lot easier. Kate Bush, I think, is very overrated. To be honest, I have hard time listening to Babushka and all those songs. Wuthering Heights, I think, is horrible. The only song I like with her is Running Up That Hill. Peter Gabriel, I think you have seen me show some songs with, and some albums with, and I do like Peter Gabriel very much, so I give this one easily to Peter Gabriel. The next one was a tough one, but for a whole other reason, because there are two artists that I like, both of them. Marvin Gaye versus Stevie Wonder. I don't have all that much Marvin Gaye albums, mostly because they are expensive and so on. But I like Marvin Gaye very, very much, especially his 70s songs. I like them very, very much. Stevie Wonder, I have a lot of albums with, and I like him very, very much. One of my absolute favorites of 70s soul and funk. So even though I love Marvin Gaye, I give it to Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is the victor here. U2 versus Ekko and the Bunnyman. Quite an easy task, actually. Ekko and the Bunnyman, I hardly know any song of, actually. They weren't that big here in Sweden, and I don't know hardly one song with Ekko and the Bunnyman. U2 I like very, very much. I have a lot of U2 albums, so the winner is easily U2. Then a tough one again. You're starting to see the pattern. Every second an easy one, every second a tough one. The Wings versus Electric Light Orchestra, ELO. There are some Wings that I actually, the little I've heard of them, I haven't heard that much of Wings other than the most obvious Band on the Run and then Live and Let Die and so on. And I like, it's pretty good songs. Though I don't have any Wings albums. I think that, but the little I've heard, it's not that bad. But it's not something that fascinates me all that much. Electric Light Orchestra, I said it before that ELO, sorry about the sun glance, ELO I'm not that big fan of, especially not Jeff Lynne's production that tend most of the times to sound very very fat and very boring, especially from the 80s and forwards. There are some good ELO songs, even it's a great album. I like Balance of Power, but that is I think the only ELO album I actually like. So even though well, this was hard actually, but I think Wings has a more even catalog than ELO, only because I'm very fed up with Jeff Lynne's production of each and every artist, and it sounds like most of them. I give it to Wings because I think they're more even. Then an easy one again. Joy Division versus the Smiths. The winner here is easily the Smiths, because other than the obvious one, Love Will Tear Us Apart, I hardly know any other Joy Division song. And I think that song is okay, but nothing more. The Smiths and Morrissey are really, really great creators of great pop music, British pop music. So I give it easily to the Smiths. And yes, you guessed it, a hard one again. Iggy Pop versus Lou Reed. Two artists that I hardly ever listened to. Iggy Pop, well, Living on the Edge of the Night is actually a great song, but I think that is the only Iggy Pop song that I actually do like. Real Wild Child maybe. But when it comes to Lou Reed, Perfect Day and so Walk on the Wild Side, they are good songs, but not something that I cheer loud when I hear. But I think that I much rather listen to Lou Reed. He's a whole lot more even song catalog than Iggy Pop, that I think is maybe a little too rocky for me. Then, yes, an easy one. Van Morrison versus Elton John. And here I will come with a pretty unpopular opinion. I think Van Morrison is extremely boring. I think, I'm not going to say that I really dislike it, but a lot of his songs goes in here and out here. They don't get stuck with me. Elton John, I have a lot of albums with. I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's a fantastic musician, composer, a lot of great albums. So I give this victory easily to Elton John. Then we have a tough one. Bob Dylan versus Neil Young. Neither of these are my favorites. I think Neil Young is extremely boring. Yet another very unpopular opinion, I know, but it is the truth, and it's a hard work to tell it, but someone's got to do it. Just kidding. But I have no interest in Neil Young songs actually. On the other hand, I don't like Bob Dylan that much either. I think he also is pretty boring. But well, neither of these are great singers in my opinion. But I think that Neil Young is even worse when it comes to voice. There actually are a couple Bob Dylan songs that are great. George Jackson and When the Night Comes Falling from the Sky from '85 are great Bob Dylan songs. But a few that I actually do like. So because of these songs, I give it to Bob Dylan. Then I'm breaking the pattern, because then comes the hard one again, but this time because there are two bands that I do like. We have Pretenders versus Blondie. Now you have seen me show a whole lot of Pretenders. I really like Pretenders and Chrissie Hynde. Their latest album that I've heard of it is definitely not the best album they made, but it's not horrible either. When it comes to Blondie, they have this habit sometimes to do some, actually at least during the late 70s, early 80s, those cheesy pop songs like you remember Denny, or The Tide is High and I'm on the Run, that I think is horrible. So even though I like most of Blondie's song catalog, and those albums that I have goes from good to real good, I think that I give this one to Pretenders that are even better. This next one is maybe the toughest one. David Bowie versus Prince, because here we have the pairing that I think, or the artists that I think are the best. I like Prince very much. so many great songs, so funky music. Even though he had a period in the around 92, 93 when he came with all these Sexy MF and My Name is Prince, this Love Symbol album that I thought was actually a huge disappointment. When it comes to David Bowie, I'm a huge fan of most of his stuff from the 60s, from the beginning all the way to the mid 80s, or should I say the 80s. So that is my I love David Bowie during those decades. However, I'm not all that. I haven't listened that much to David Bowie from the 90s and forward until his sad death a couple of years ago. I have listened very little to those songs, so I'm not that. I don't have that connection with his latest stuff. But still, I think that David Bowie is the one that I listen even more to of these two. So even though I love them both of these artists, I give the victory to David Bowie. Next, Blur versus Oasis, the classic Britpop feud from the 90s. It should be a pretty easy one actually, because as you have seen, I've shown a lot of Britpop. I love Britpop. I discovered it pretty late though. In 1995 I discovered it, and from that forward I loved Oasis, I loved Suede, I loved Verve, Pulp, I like Cast, Northern Uproar, and all of these bands. However, there was one Britpop band that I actually had hard time listening to. That wasn't my favorite at all, and that was Blur. They were maybe they had a period when they became popular in the mid 90s, where they were very easy songs, a little too easy. And Park Life is a good song actually, by far Blur's best song, but otherwise and then came the late 90s when they put on even tougher guitars, and Beatle Bum and Song 2 came that I thought was horrible. So I've never been a fan of Blur. However, Oasis are my absolute favorite in the Britpop genre, so it was a little uneven contest. I have a whole lot of Oasis stuff, some of them also unofficial actually, that I've shown. So easily I give the victory to Oasis, that I love the best of these two. Then maybe the worst pairing, Pink Floyd versus Led Zeppelin. There you have two bands. Sorry for saying this, all fans of these bands, but there you have two of the most boring and uninteresting bands that I know. I never been a fan of A Stairway to Heaven. I think it's way overplayed, and a whole lot of love that I also not used that fan of. Pink Floyd, I always said, is maybe one of the most overrated bands ever. I think they are extremely boring, with exception from one song, High Hopes from the Division Bell, that I think is marvelous. So only for that song I give this victory to Pink Floyd. Bruce Springsteen versus Tom Petty, also a battle between singers that I do like both of them. However, I haven't listened all that much to Tom Petty's earliest songs. I love his stuff from 85 and forward, but before that I haven't that much check on. Bruce Springsteen, I don't have that much Bruce Springsteen albums from the 70s, but I have heard a lot of songs from the 70s with Bruce Springsteen, and I have a lot of albums from the 80s and 90s and 00s also, and I think he's fantastic. His storytelling in his song is marvelous. I like his voice, his production, his guitar playing. So I give this one actually to, not easily, but I give it to Bruce Springsteen, even though I like them both. Then a very uneven one. Jam versus XTC. I haven't hardly listened to the Jam. I can't name one Jam song actually. At least not now at this moment. XTC, you have seen me shown some albums. I have some albums with XTC. I like Andy Partridge's voice, and they have some really great songs and albums. So I give this one actually easily to XTC. Next one, getting closer to the finish. Paul Simon versus Joni Mitchell. Also, when it's the same as the Jam, I haven't listened all that much to Joni Mitchell. I know some of her songs, but they're not something that I do remember that much, and I guess that says it all. When it comes to, I guess I should listen more to Joni Mitchell. I know, maybe I should discover her more, but right now I don't know all that much about her music. Paul Simon, I have some albums with. I have a huge respect for what he has done to music, and the albums I have are really great. So I do like Paul Simon very much. So I give the victory to Paul Simon. Yet another uneven one. Fleetwood Mac versus Queen. Maybe the most uneven one. I said it before, I'm not all that fan of Queen. They have some great songs. One Vision, Kind of Magic, I Want It All. But Show Must Go On, actually maybe the best Queen song. But they also have this sense of where the songs becomes over dramatic, and sometimes also very overplayed, and pretty often those two goes hand in hand. Hello There, Bohemian Rhapsody. So I'm not that big fan of Queen. Some great songs, and I have a greatest album, but that I feel is enough. Fleetwood Mac, on the other hand, at least from the 70s with Christine McVie, Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, are some of my absolute favorites bands. So that's why it's a little bit uneven, because I'm going to admit, the Fleetwood Mac from the 60s with Peter Green, I gave it a shot. It was too much blues rock for me. It wasn't my style at all. But the 70s and until today, Fleetwood Mac is amazing. I'm a huge Fleetwood Mac fan. So the victory here easily goes to Fleetwood Mac. And finally, Elvis Costello versus the Police. This is not easy. The Police is a band that I've also seen as pretty overrated. I'm not going to say that I hate the Police. There are songs that I can listen to, but it's not songs that I actually think is something that do me anything. I mean, Message in a Bottle, Roxanne, and all that stuff, I think is uninteresting. Not bad, but uninteresting. Every Breath You Take was okay the first 50 times I heard it, but now it's among the songs that I feel like I have hard time listening to because it's so overplayed. Elvis Costello, like Joni Mitchell, is an artist that I actually haven't listened all that much to, and the little I've listened to hasn't been attracting me all that much. Though his band is called The Attractions, it hasn't attracted me that much. But there are some Elvis Costello song that actually is good. He has a song called Veronica that's actually is pretty good. So I give this one to Elvis Costello because he has some songs that are good, even though I'm not listening to him all that much. So that was 40 artists that I have now given my review of. Tough job, but someone's gotta do it. So now I'm going to continue to enjoy this marvelous view, and I hope that each and every one of you are still enjoying the summertime after all, and take care of yourself, and so long.